to Ugly Oysters. On this channel we explore all things related to Vancouver, British Columbia, located on the west coast of Canada. You can think of this as a travel channel or as an information channel, but for us this is a lifestyle channel. Vancouver is our city, and life in Vancouver is different from the life a person might live elsewhere. As Reid Danahay says, by exploring a particular life, I hope to understand a way of life. Most of the homes built in the early days of the West End no longer exist. However, if a person knows where to look, there are still a few buildings scattered here and there that were constructed in the late 1800s. The images you are viewing are some of the remaining few first and second generation homes, along with some apartment buildings. The coming video is about the origins of the West End of Vancouver. By the end of this video, you should have a very good idea of the early history of this part of the city and the kind of people who settled this area. This video will be of interest to people who want a fairly accurate rendering of the dates and details of the distant past. However, please be aware that while the facts and dates are historically accurate as much as possible, the images are not always so. While critical images are quite accurate, many others are provided simply to provoke a feeling appropriate to the facts. It is my hope that you find some visual pleasure while learning the information presented here. And to do this, I have made liberal use of short clips from other YouTubers and have included their names and links below. Further, you will notice throughout the video several links to other videos. These links take you to conversations about the content you are viewing and are much less formal. These conversations are intended to take us into deeper water where we might then bring some precious pearls to the light of day. You might want to view the entire video once and then return for a second viewing. At that time, you might benefit from clicking on the links that take you to related themes. You might do this back and forth several times between facts and interpretation in order to derive the most benefit from what is provided here. You are, of course, encouraged to put your comments below and become part of the conversation, and, as usual, like, subscribe, and click on notifications to get the most up-to-date information from this channel. Let's begin to explore a major chapter in the history of the West End. Vancouver's West End is generally thought to be west of Burrard Street and bounded by water on the other three sides, English Bay, Cole Harbour, and Lost Lagoon, which is at the entrance of Stanley Park. The West End began as a quiet residential area desirable for its temperate climate, tree-lined avenues, and easy access to the ocean. Near enough to the Gastown area without being exposed to the smell of its barns and warehouses, the West End originally attracted Vancouver's wealthy residents, but over time the area grew to be popular for young people and new immigrants. This is Burrard Street Bridge. The camera is panning northwest along Sunset Beach Park. It is November, and the shot is taken from Vanier Park in Kitsilano, across the entrance to False Creek. From this side we see the high-density residential living aspect of the West End. A summertime view taken from Stanley Park looking south shows that the West End also has a modern steel and glass high-rise dwelling and office towers face. The West End has always been a magnet for social activity, restaurants, hotels, and plenty of shopping. It is also a center for the enjoyment of culture and the fine arts. But what are the origins of this vibrant city life? Where did it all begin? And how did the West End acquire its distinctive character? Long before any trees were felled, any roads were laid, and before any businesses were established, three young men made preparations to depart their homeland for life in an unknown but promising land of adventure and gold. Two of them, John Morton and Samuel Brighouse, grew up together in Sallandine Nook near Huddersfield, England. John's parents, Joseph and Rhoda Morton, married in Huddersfield on June 7, 1827. They had a large family with 8 children and carried on their craft of pottery. Generations earlier, the Morton family were Scottish Presbyterians who fled to Sallandine Nook in the 1680s to avoid religious persecution. From this date until 1985, the Mortons had a pottery kiln on the site pictured here. They lived near the Spotted Cow, which was owned by Samuel Brighouse and his wife, who had been a Morton before marriage. Mr. Brighouse and his family enjoyed a comfortable life. In addition to the Spotted Cow, they had 100 acres, which was a large holding of land in this part of the West Riding. Brighouse was the parish overseer and a member of the board of Poor Law Guardians, which meant that he supported the poor by providing housing and care in exchange for work. His son, also named Samuel, took charge of his father's farm when he was 18, and despite Samuel's adult success with managing a productive farm, he followed through on a teenage promise made to his cousin John. In 1862, Samuel turned his back on the predictable and prosperous life of the farm and together with John departed to the gold fields in British Columbia's Cariboo region. John and William traveled in style to North America on the Great Eastern, the largest ship of its day, combining propeller, paddle wheels, and sails on one ship. The ship was so impressive it inspired Jules Verne to author the novel Floating City. Originally designed to take passengers to the Australia gold rush without refueling, it was now loading up for North America. According to a New York Times article, the Great Eastern departed Milford Haven at 2 p.m. on the 7th of May, 1862 for a reasonably impressive run of about 10 days. How Sam and John passed the time on this voyage into destiny is hard to say. No doubt there were plenty of social events. There would of course have been dining as well as drinking and dancing, since alehouses were very common in the day. There was also most probably a sense of unreality as they enjoyed their opulent surroundings and gazed across the empty waters, anticipating the riches and adventure that awaited them. Along the way, they met up with someone else their age, William Hailstone. He was traveling alone. A friendship was struck, and they persuaded William to join them on their quest for riches. With the addition of William Hailstone, the duo of John Morton and Samuel Brighouse had now become a trio. The daring trio arrived at 6 a.m. on May 17, 1862. Page 8 of the May 18th issue of the New York Times comments, "This was not the first appearance of the Great Eastern in New York. The impression is given that it was a splendid voyage, and along with many passengers there would be plenty of supplies and mail to be distributed as well." Having planted their feet on North America's eastern shore, how were they to proceed? Did they stay in New York a few days to take in the sights of this famous American gateway to the Western world? And how did they make their way to the much less developed West Coast that was still a full continent away? Accounts vary. One story that happens to be full of errors on other matters claims that the three friends continued to sail via Panama and San Francisco to arrive at Victoria on Vancouver Island 25th of June, 1862, while another article, full of reliable documentation on various other matters, claims the trio traveled overland. It should be said that while rail lines were being established, there were no completed transcontinental railroads in Canada or the U.S. at that time, as indicated by this map of completed rails at the end of 1860. And if there were no rail lines, a normal trip across the continent could take 6 months. Yet the thing we can be certain of is that the journey from New York to Victoria took 39 days, an itinerary that seems to favor the journey over water. Regardless, it is clear that such a journey required plenty of adaptability. What the trio arrived to in Victoria was a chaotic mix of men, mostly, arriving from all parts of the world, each eagerly competing for their claim of wealth, mixed with the unpredictability of life in the wilderness and the politics of British and American powers competing for dominance in the New World. 13 years prior to their arrival, 1849, Britain created the colony of Vancouver Island while handing the administration of the colony over to the Hudson's Bay Company for 10 years. In 1858, 4 years before their arrival, gold was discovered near Lytton on the Fraser River, which led to the first gold rush. Because of the resulting influx of settlers, especially Americans, the British government established the mainland colony of British Columbia that same year. The discovery of gold in the Cariboo region of British Columbia led to a second gold rush centered primarily around Williams Creek, which began about 1861, just 1 year before the three men arrived. Victoria, where they first set foot, was transformed into a tent city as prospectors, speculators, land agents, and outfitters flooded in from around the world. In addition, the Hudson's Bay Company's Fort Langley burgeoned economically as the staging point for many of the prospectors heading to the canyon. No doubt Sam, John, and William settled their legal affairs in Victoria, then traveled across the channel to Fort Langley, where they stocked up on the necessary supplies and then off into the forests of British Columbia. Dreams and visions soon entered the world of stony wilderness. It is said that the three friends, Brighouse, Morton, and Hailstone, made 2 trips on foot to the gold fields near modern-day Lytton, the site of the first gold rush, which amounted to about 700 kilometers or 440 miles each trip. I suppose their first trip out was enough to learn that they had not adequately prepared, or needed to resupply, and back out they went. In the end, the lure of gold, the primary purpose of their trip to the new land, turned out to be a bust. One account explains the weather had been severe, and all the best claims had been taken or emptied out. For whatever reason, having come so far already, the three did not travel further to Williams Creek, the site of the current gold fever. Morton managed to recover some costs through a small business he set up of selling horseshoe nails, and the three returned to New Westminster to ponder the aching reality that the gold they dreamt of was not to be. They had to plan their next move. 2 years prior to the arrival of Morton, Brighouse, and Hailstone, the city of New Westminster had been founded by Colonel Richard Moody, who himself had arrived in British Columbia 2 years earlier still. Moody became the first lieutenant governor of the recently established colony of British Columbia and chief commissioner of lands and works. Colonel Moody selected the site and founded New Westminster as the capital of British Columbia based on the strategic excellence of its position and the quality of its port. However, it is said that Moody's engineers were continuously hampered by insufficient funds to develop the planned city, so one can imagine that 2 years after the establishment of this outpost, various projects were in differing stages of unfinished development. After the lost cause of seeking gold, Brighouse, Morton, and Hailstone found themselves regrouping in this wilderness city. Bereft now of their plans for riches in gold, what were they to do? Was Brighouse considering returning to the farm? Morton must have been particularly troubled, since it was he who made Brighouse promise to come with him on this treasure hunt to nowhere. Perhaps Hailstone was wondering if he should break out on his own again. Having sniffed the sharp, acrid smell of risk, were they now swallowing the bile of failure? It must have seemed a long way from their hopeful days in New York, and perhaps an eternity away from their childhood homes. How did these men plan to fill their empty stomachs and hearts? One day, Morton was passing by a shop window when he saw a lump of coal for sale. Coal was a rare commodity in these parts, the only available fuel being wood. However, his interest was not fuel. Morton knew that a certain kind of clay used in pot-making was usually found near coal deposits. He asked the shopkeeper where the coal had come from and was pointed in the direction of an aboriginal resident disappearing down the road. Morton hurried after the man, caught up with him, and made arrangements to visit the coal seam. Taking a guide, Morton first visited False Creek, then Coal Harbor. During his exploration of the coal seam, John Morton had opportunity to view Burrard Inlet, and was very impressed, not just because of its great beauty, but because it had all the advantages of a large natural harbor. Returning to his two friends, Brighouse and Hailstone, he convinced them by his fervor and enthusiasm. So they acquired 180 acres each, the maximum stake permissible under the law of the time, purchased for a total of $550.75. This purchase contained the lot that would later become the West End of Vancouver. A condition of their purchase was that one or more of them would have to live in the area for a given length of time before they could officially acquire the title to the lot. The purpose of residing on the lot was to show that the three truly had intentions to develop the area. The three young men agreed to the conditions, and by the time of their first Christmas, 1862, built a small cabin on a bluff above the sea, near the location of the present-day Marine Building. They took turns living in this cabin 1 month at a time, while earning money from other jobs in New Westminster. Living away from most other white men, Brighouse, Morton, and Hailstone became friendly with the First Nations people in the area, learning to admire and trust them. Having originally heard tales of torture and massacre back east, they were happy to overcome their original prejudice and live among the people, trading services such as lending their grindstone for fish and meat and learning traditional methods of hunting and fishing. There was one incident, however, that caused Morton to feel very exposed. When he was alone at the cabin one night, he awoke to noises outside. Getting dressed, he went to take a look and saw a gathering of First Nations people chanting and the body of a woman hanging from a tree. He was so disturbed by this event that he reported the matter to the police in New Westminster the next day. An investigation revealed that the dead woman had killed a baby and been hanged for murder. Brighouse, Morton, and Hailstone acquired the reputation of being young and inexperienced. Somebody dubbed them the three Greenhorns for buying a massive plot of wild land at an inflated price. It was a way of indicating their foolishness, and they had to wear this dunce cap for a long time. Yet these three Greenhorns opened up a new area of BC and had a vision of a prosperous community when no one else could see it. Their vision was to be heavily tested, however, for it took many years, and the Greenhorns had to pass through several trials before their vision ever began to produce results. While waiting for their claim to acquire value, the Greenhorns did whatever else they could to support themselves. Samuel Brighouse seemed the most able to maintain a comfortable lifestyle and a promising future. Shortly after investing in the brickmaker's claim, Brighouse began to roam the Fraser Valley in search of more productive land. After finding Lulu Island, what eventually became Richmond, Brighouse made another land investment of 697 acres, almost 4 times the size of the brickmaker's claim, in the autumn of 1864. Upon this land, and at New Westminster, Brighouse ran a dairy farm and raised stock and thoroughbreds. Over time, he diversified into salmon canning with his nephew, Michael Brighouse Wilkinson, the two of them seen here many years into the future. Anytime Brighouse appears in photos of the past, one gets the impression that he always looks vital and at ease. There is record of him traveling to California and encouraging people to seek the good life in Canada. It has been said that he married a Spanish woman of noted beauty, whom he perhaps met in his California journeys. Over the years of his stay in Canada, life seems to have been very good for Samuel Brighouse. John Morton went back to England in the late 1870s and 8 years later married Jane Ann Bailey in the Field district of Lancashire. She was born in Blackpool, Lancashire on November 12, 1842, 8 years younger than John. John and Jane soon had a daughter, Elizabeth, who was born in Blackpool on May 2, 1879, and by 1880, John and his young family traveled back to Canada. By 1881, Joseph was born in New Westminster on February 3rd. However, Jane did not survive the birth, and John was left alone with 2 young children. It must have been quite a blow to John, and he wasn't managing well. Morton turned to doing odd jobs, such as ditch digger and milk roundsman. His daughter Elizabeth was put in the care of the Roman Catholic convent in New Westminster, and his son lived with a private family. It seemed that Morton's life was collapsing. One account claims that Morton was suffering from great poverty. However, Morton endured the hard times and came to inherit Jane's share of the tea merchant business she had with her brother James in Blackpool, England. Worth about £700, he used the money to retain his part in the brickmaker's claim. 3 years after the death of his first wife, John married Ruth Mount on April 22, 1884. Around that time, he set up a brickmaking business in Clayburn, part of the town of Abbotsford, and purchased land in Mission, where he ran a farm. Thereafter, John and his family continued to prosper, and the Morton household lived in comfort until the value of the brickmaker's claim matured. Hailstone retained his interest in the brickmaker's claim for a very long time. He was still a co-owner when the Greenhorns were persuaded to donate 1/3 of the property to the Canadian Pacific Railway as an incentive to build the railway through to Cole Harbour. The Greenhorns hoped that the nearby completion of the railway, which was to occur in 1887, might bring people to the area to buy lots. However, according to one account, by the time the CPR had made it to Gastown, the 3 Greenhorns had already parted ways. Morton went to California, lured once again by the prospect of gold. Brighouse did his farming in Richmond, and Hailstone sold his interest to Brighouse for a $20 gold piece, several sacks of flour worth $5, and an Indian pony with a string halter worth $25. Hailstone then returned to England, where he married and had 2 daughters. According to this account, Hailstone missed out on the development of his property share. This version of the story is, however, contradicted by the photographic evidence. Around 1890, about 3 years after the completion of the rail terminus. A photo of the three Greenhorns shows clearly that the men are together and advanced in years, and their partnership, by all appearances, has stood the test of time. The three Greenhorns had been mocked much of their lives for their careless purchase of worthless land, but in the end the Greenhorns had the last laugh. With the completion of the railway, lots began to sell at prices from $350 to $1,000 as people realized the potential of the area. With the CPR building rail lines, a hotel going up, roads being laid through the area, plus the establishment of Stanley Park, lots began to move quickly. By 1888, the area was gaining respectability and had swiftly become an attractive investment to wealthy and elite buyers, with fine views across Burrard Inlet. In these later, more prosperous years, John Morton built a Baptist church in honor of his second wife, Ruth. Brighouse was considered a popular farming man and served on Vancouver's early city council, and Hailstone sent his earnings back home to support his wife and daughters. The three Greenhorns seemed connected in life, but also in death. It is peculiar to note that all three men died within 13 months of each other, two of them, Brighouse and Hailstone, in England, and Morton in Vancouver. Through this story of the three Greenhorns, we have touched the glittering surface of the history and establishment of the West End. Much more can and may be said in later episodes of other people and events that have marked the development of Vancouver. I do hope some of you will push beneath the surface of this story to seek out some pearl that you might keep for your journey. You may watch the video again and click the links in the video or down below where you'll find discussions related to the themes that arise. There is so much treasure to be found in the three Greenhorns and their adventures and the lives they led. Please consider joining in and contributing to the conversation. And if you liked this video or have thoughts you wish to share, put your comments below. Click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to support this channel and receive updates whenever new videos are completed. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this little drive along Beach Avenue, overlooking English Bay Beach. Let's go pearl diving again sometime.